listening to Roar the podcast, the cyber resilience podcast for all existing and aspiring cyber professionals, putting a spotlight on the vital role that people and culture play in making organizations cyber safe. Resilient and cyber-savvy people are an organization's strongest defense against cybercrime. I am your host, Marilise de Villiers. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Roar, the podcast. And I'm so delighted today to be welcomed by TJ Power. Hi, TJ. Good morning.
Hey, Marilise. How's it going?
Very well, thank you. And welcome.
Thank you.
So excited. I'm so excited to speak to you. And I am really curious to hear more about today's topic and learn more about today's topic, which is going to be all about digital and how we interact with technology to work for us and not against us. So everybody, TJ is a neuroscientist. He's also the founder of Digital Mind. Very young guy, as you may or may not see on the screen, but early 20s, but really bringing a very fresh perspective on mental health. And works with many organizations and in schools. So his signature mental health program focuses very much on empowering individuals with immediate, actionable insights to improve the experience they are having in their minds. So that conversation we're having with ourselves, is it a good conversation? Is it an empowering conversation? Or is there always that sort of little doubting little voice inside? Those of you who know my work, at Roar, we are passionate about people speaking up and having courageous conversations. And for me, it's very much about the conversation you're having with yourself, your inner roar, as well as the conversation you're having with others. So it's really the courage to speak your truth. And I'm, really so honored to have TJ because, he's making strides in the industry. He's also a member of our in our BIP 100, so Business is Personal 100 Club. That's his mum and dad, Penny and Thomas Power, and he shows up every week to support all of us with our mental well-being. And this is the one session in that community that I always prioritize, TJ. I never miss.
That's pretty cool.
So also just really, I asked TJ to tell me what he is most proud of, and he said that the fact that he became a lecturer of third-year students at Exeter University at the age of 21. This was pretty wild, and kicked off my career, leading me to speaking at Oxford University and Toronto University. So awesome, amazing. So tell us about TJ. Who is TJ, the person?
Who is TJ the person? That's a broad question. I'm 25. I'm spending my time running this company, Digital Mind, training companies primarily. That's the area I've been in for the last 2.5 years since I left the lecturing. And then I'm doing a lot more school training now as well. So I've been moving around to different schools. And I just have a massive interest in this mental health space. I'm so curious as to why so many people are having a tough time in their mind. And I'm someone that doesn't just live in like perfect mental health myself. I also fluctuate like we all do with our minds, and just have a real interest in trying to optimize how do we live our lives, how are we interacting with tech, how are we doing all the different behaviors that are creating the experience we have in our mind. So yeah, that's kind of a bit about me.
Yeah, and I think it's so great that you highlight that because, we have good days and we have bad days. Mm-hmm. And I think we're always work in progress. But I think it's the fact that, you show up every day and you try and be a better version of yourself compared to the day before, and you don't compete with the external world and with external circumstances. I think that's I think for me was a pivotal shift in my improvement in my well-being. Was very much around, I've held up the mirror and I had a deep look at myself and what I wanted from life and how I want to show up and the difference that I want to make in the world. And I think the fact that you have good days and you have bad days, I think is just the reality of life.
100%. It is.
So tell me about your perspectives on why you think we have such a, let's call it a pandemic, mental health pandemic in the world. Why are these challenges on the rise?
Yeah, I think it's a big question. There's like a lot of different areas that are influencing this. From obviously I'm in this neuroscience space, so my ideas are shaped within that direction. And we have this really, really important chemical for our mental health, which is called dopamine, which I'm sure you've heard of, and I'm sure many people listening have heard of dopamine. Dopamine is basically this chemical that's totally responsible for your ability to motivate yourself to do anything. So to do your work, to exercise, to eat food, to socialize. And when we're high in this chemical, we feel really like excited and motivated and focused about our life. And the other side of that is when this chemical is pretty crashed out, it's like a really clear sign of you experience things like low mood. And if it's really low, you experience depression and anxiety and things like that. It's like this vital life force energy. And the way in which we basically constructed the modern world, we're really kind of hijacking this chemical and messing it up a little bit. So social media and in general, the amount of time we're spending checking the phone can crash this chemical out. You then have other factors outside of technology, things like junk food and alcohol and drugs and vaping and porn. These kind of things are also really depleting this chemical, and we are spending a hell of a lot of time doing this sort of stuff. So this really one vital chemical for our mental health is getting messed around a lot with how we live our lives now. And I think that's a really, really big factor.
Yeah. And it's all the distractions all the time, because we have, literally have our phones with us 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
I wake up in the morning and my phone is the first thing. I put my AirPods in and I do my meditation.
Nice. That's a good start.
But it works for me most of the time, not always, most of the time. But it's so tempting to just quickly check your Facebook or 100%. Your Insta, and it's like, how do you develop that discipline, that sort of muscle to actually prevent yourself from actually heading for the social media first and actually doing the thing that serves you, which is the meditation, for example?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Sorry, the postman just outside the window there, so I got distracted. The main thing, the phone first thing is really, really significant. When we wake up, our brain has basically spent a lot of time throughout the night building this chemical, this dopamine chemical, so that you can imagine evolutionarily, it's pretty useful for a human to wake up and have motivation and drive to go about their day. When we go straight into the phone, we're slightly dipping that dopamine. It's slightly heading on the downward trajectory. I think it's so different if you wake up and you just do something before you go into the phone. And even if this becomes like you're starting to delay it by 2 minutes and then get up to 5 minutes and then 10 minutes, it gradually it will have more and more value. The thing I think you should do is either charge the phone the other side of the room or outside of the bedroom. So either like in the corner of the room or outside the bedroom, but not right by your head, because it's impossible to resist. We're too connected to the phone that you're gonna check it if it's next to you. With that in mind, it kind of requires, if you use an alarm, to buy an alarm, or I use my iPad as my alarm, and I just don't have any of the social media and email on the iPad. So the iPad doesn't have that same like pull for me that I'd go into. And then it's just about thinking, what could I do to just delay the time before I check the phone? So it's like, can I go brush my teeth? Can I go to the toilet? Could I have my shower? In an ideal world, could you like go out for a walk for a little bit before you then go into the phone? Because I think if you level yourself and get into a nice steady place internally before the external world has an influence, I think you feel very different as your day kicks off.
100%. I can notice the difference in my days when I've had my half an hour, some mornings meditation versus the days where I'm like running late, I'm tired, I'm just jumping up, I'm constantly reacting to the circumstances around me. And it's just incredible how we show up so differently if we've had that time to just go inside and just calm our system, calm our nervous system as well. Because sometimes during the night, there's a lot that come up for us, in terms of what happens in the sub and unconscious. And I think that sometimes you wake up feeling a little bit anxious. So you've got to almost like check in with yourself, like where's that, do that sort of temperature check and really look at or think about what is the thing that's going to serve me most right now. But it requires a lot of self-awareness, doesn't it?
It does. I think the self-awareness piece is really important. And I think the absolute number one way, and it connects into this tech stuff, to develop self-awareness is just by spending more time in the quiet without your phone. And typically people aren't just nowadays going to sit on the sofa in silence without a TV on, because we need too much entertainment now. But for me, a lot of self-awareness and insight came, and my ability to connect into my intuition, when I started going on quiet walks on my own without my phone. So just like spending time actually listening to my mind, listening to my system. Self-awareness then grows, and then you start to make better and better decisions.
And I think that listening to your mind, and also I think some people can't listen to their minds because the conversation is so negative.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think, for me personally, for many, many years, for decades even in my life, I had a very toxic conversation. I mean, those of you who know me with my background with eating disorders for over 15 years, it was that constant self-abuse, that was constant, I call it my inner bully. Some people call it the inner critic, the imposter. You can label it whatever you want, but it's that sort of, it's just too painful sometimes to actually listen to the conversation.
100%. I actually had a very similar experience to you with that.
And I think that that really took me a lot of well, I guess there comes a point where you just say enough is enough, and that there's more to life, and that you want to be well. For me, I wanted to be well when I met my husband. So he was kind of a pivotal point, a catalyst for me, and wanting to be well. So I think perhaps advice from my personal experience would be to look out, for that thing that it's, I mean, if you take the need or the want to lose weight, it's not because you want to see a number on the scale. There has to be a bigger reason. There has to be a proper why, a bigger why behind. And I think that's the emotional attachment that you then get to something, and your ability to succeed is probably a lot better. Your likelihood, I should say, is probably a lot higher. So tell me a little bit about how this kind of mind or brain heart connection and how it all works, because I think the neuroscience is fascinating, but I think there's very few of us really understand. If I say to you, can you draw me a picture of the mind? People often think the mind equals the brain, but that's not true, right? The mind is actually the connection between your brain and your heart. So mind or head and body. And it's a really kind of complicated, but also not complicated concept.
Yeah, I think the mind is ridiculously unusual, because there isn't like a physiological part of us that actually is the mind. Like we have the brain, we've got the heart, we have the gut. The mind, I think, is just what we're utilizing to describe what we're experiencing. So like we're experiencing all these thoughts, these feelings, some of it's in our head, some of it's in our body. The mind is just the overall thing that encompasses it. So I would say that's typically how I define the mind. In terms of how this also connects into the heart, you then have this other neurotransmitter. So you have the dopamine first, then you have oxytocin, which is the real bonding neurotransmitter for humans. So that really interconnects with what you're sharing here about your connection with yourself. And also, interestingly, as you shared about how your connection with yourself slightly altered when you began that more purposeful route of connecting with your husband. And sometimes connecting outwardly and finding like deeper bonds can also make us want to strengthen our relationship with ourselves. And that's kind of the main primary focus of oxytocin.
Yeah, amazing. So I want to talk a little bit about stress and anxiety, because I think I'm personally very, very interested in this, because I get anxious. A part of me gets anxious a lot. I've learned how to cope with it better. But I think I work in an industry, specifically in digital, and where people are, operating in a very fast-paced world, where the threat landscape is constantly changing at such a massively fast pace, and we're always on the back foot, because we're always finding, how savvy the cyber criminals are and how quickly they are inventing ways to attack us and get into the systems and just, really cause havoc. So we're constantly in that sort of really, really high paced, high stress, constantly reacting mode. And I'd love to know your perspectives on, first of all, how do we navigate, or what happens when we navigate such high stress environments? What is kind of physically happening? So I think that self-awareness would be helpful for people to have.
Yeah, so we have this, as you'll know, this fight or flight system. So this is our like stress system that has a really intelligently designed process of being able to make the system go really, really quickly. So if you can imagine, say you were suddenly had like a threat to your survival. I always think it's good to think evolutionarily, because we spent hundreds of thousands of years running around those jungles, and that's kind of what our system was built to do. Relatively speaking, this concept of sitting behind computers, it's like a blink of an eye in human history. So you have this system that's designed, if you suddenly had some kind of threat to your survival, it would turn on fast. It releases some chemicals into our stomach, like adrenaline and cortisol, into our adrenal system. And basically its function is to speed up everything, speed up your heart, speed up your blood pressure. Not only that, also speeds up the pace of your thinking. So some of you may relate to experiencing kind of like a stressful event happen, and then your thoughts start to go really fast. And then they also go fast, maybe in a negative spiraling pattern. So you begin to think in like quite a negative way about the situation and all the outcomes that could happen. And that is actually used to be a really useful adaptive mechanism, because you can imagine if suddenly an animal was in front of you that could cause you damage, could hurt you, it'd be very useful if you could think in a negative way as quickly as possible, all of the possible worst case scenarios to try and find a solution. So that's kind of, we have this stress system designed to do that. And in our modern world, rather than having these giant spikes of stress, like an animal fighting you, we're getting a lot of subtle stresses. They're called micro stress doses that are building up and building up. And this is what leads us into these more kind of stressed out, anxious headspaces. So it's all about understanding how on a regular basis can you be activating the opposing system, the calming system, to be regulating the nervous system back down.
Amazing. And I'd love to hear more about the how in terms of techniques. I just want to sort of make an observation first about that sort of, you were saying it's lots of little things that happen and they stack, they stack and they stack and they stack. And then a seemingly really simple, obvious, little tiny thing happens and it all comes crashing down.
Yeah, for sure.
It's almost like, what's that game? Is it called Jenga?
Yeah, it was like we're playing Jenga.
Yeah, I have that image in my mind about playing Jenga now. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the how, because I think that's, where the magic is and where I've learned the most from you over the past months in terms of practical, really tangible things that we can do to actually serve ourselves and help ourselves and navigate this crazy world.
For sure. So this kind of starts at the beginning of your day, how you kind of manage these micro stress doses, and is going to continue to connect back into this tech stuff, because the relationship we have with the phone is very significant. Although I absolutely love my phone, I love technology, it is ever since that we've started spending mass amounts of time on these devices that mental health has started to plummet a little bit more, especially if you look at young people. So I have to keep referring back to it, because I think building a healthy relationship with this stuff is life-changing. But with micro stress doses, if you think when you first wake up in the morning, your brain is in a really vulnerable state, because they're really adapted to live that way, so that if you were woken in the night by some rustling in some bushes when we were sleeping outside, it could very quickly act and go in any kind of direction in order to optimize survival. When you wake up, you're in this kind of vulnerable, malleable state. If you check your email and there's something a tiny bit stressful in there, that's going to be a micro stress dose. If there's something in your WhatsApp that's like someone hasn't replied to you, or something from a friend that's annoying, it's another micro stress dose. So the beginning of all of this, how to manage your stress levels, is first thing, not having any micro stress doses, and instead having quite a calming morning. So whatever you personally would find calming, it might be your shower is really calming. It might be you like reading a book in the morning. It might be your meditation stuff. Meditation and breathing stuff is really good, because that's like actively regulating and calming your nervous system. It might be like sitting and having a cup of tea, putting a candle on. But the mornings are like absolutely vital, so that the whole system starts on a nice level, calm playing field, instead of going straight in, okay, stress, and then you begin on that pathway. once you've had those kind of things, there are some really key aspects of what calm our nervous system. I would say the absolute best possible one is when we're out in nature and out in sunlight, because our bodies are just so adapted to live out there. They just, once they're there, they suddenly feel like they're home, basically, because that's where they were growing over so long. And when you look at countries like New Zealand and Japan, have got really, really good at researching nature as a treatment for mental health. In Japan, they have this whole idea of forest bathing and getting people to spend a hell of a lot more time in forests if they have mental health disorders. And as soon as a body is in nature, the whole nervous system just regulates. That cortisol stress chemical goes down. So nature is a big, big thing. The breathing is a big thing, the calming mornings. And then the other thing that's actually massive for our stress levels is our food and what we're putting into our body, because we have this third chemical. We're gradually learning them throughout our chat. So we have serotonin, which is really the more emotional, mood stabilizing happiness chemical. And that one is very different to the others because it's actually being built inside your digestive tract, inside your stomach. And when the stomach is happy, our emotions are a lot more stable. So fueling your body with good food and lots of water, herbal tea, fruits, veg, natural unprocessed stuff actually leads to your whole tummy being a lot calmer, which then has a big, big effect on your nervous system and how steady you feel overall.
Amazing. Yeah. And I think, so let's just recap those three.
So we had the
three chemicals.
The three chemicals. So we've got the dopamine so far. So we've got the motivator, the one driving you to do stuff. We've then got the oxytocin. So this is the connector, the one bonding you to yourself and others. Yeah. And then we've got the serotonin. This is the more mood, emotions-based chemical. And really is the chemical that wants you to still be a hunter-gatherer. When you look at what activates serotonin, it's basically nature, sunlight, good food, sleep, deep breathing. It's all the things that we would have been doing absolutely tons of. And it's all the stuff that recharges the system. So if you're looking at a lot of individuals I work with in companies are experiencing a lot of burnout because we're pushing the system pretty hard these days. And the serotonin based stuff is kind of the stuff that's like plugging the iPhone into the wall. It's like all the stuff that will wirelessly recharge us outside or when food is going in, that kind of thing.
Brilliant. And I think, I'm reflecting on people's reaction when we talk about meditation.
Yeah.
And so I would just like to talk a little bit more about meditation.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because I think about very recently, probably about 3 years ago, I was one of those people who didn't have time to meditate, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I slowly started with sort of 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, very, very inconsistent. Mm-hmm. And now it's become, over the last 3 years, for me, it's almost become like a non-negotiable.
That's awesome. That's a big achievement. So well done.
Thank you. And I think, but I want to kind of rewind 3 years to when I was in that mind frame of, challenging the benefits, B, not feeling like I'm being productive when I'm meditating, right? Because I don't have the time.
Yeah.
So just help people kind of understand, what happens in the brain when we have those conversations about meditation, and it's, it's seemingly simple, but it's also very hard to actually start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, meditation is an interesting one for me because it really was the catalyst for a huge change in my life. I was at university when I discovered meditation. I was doing my undergrad at this point. I was pre-masters, and I used to, party pretty hard, if I'm honest, like really hard. And that was kind of my lifestyle. I was still doing well at university, but I had like a very different approach to my health, and my mental health was way more fluctuating back then because I was pushing my mind a little bit further. And I chose to do this mindfulness course. And if I'm honest, I chose it because I thought it was kind of sounded a bit easier than my other really complicated neuroscience modules. And I thought at least I can have one module that would just be a little bit calmer for me to study. Went along to this thinking this would be the easiest thing I'd be doing. Started sitting in the quiet. And like you mentioned earlier with the self-talk, found it insanely difficult to sit in the quiet, listening to all the noise in my head and all the different critique that my mind had to say about how I was living my life. And it's actually so ironic because I used to sometimes in these meditations, and based on what I'm teaching now, it's ridiculous, but I used to sometimes think, right, everyone's in the meditation in the group. I know they're all committed. So I'd open my eyes and go on my phone, which is just insane. I found it so hard. So for those listening that think I can't do meditation, I can't focus, or it's too difficult. I was right at the other side of that, and now it is a cool practice for me. So it can be done. In terms of what's happening, I think there's like two things you're learning to do. You have one thing that's you're really teaching yourself how to breathe properly when you're meditating. And it's very significant being able to breathe properly. From a anxiety stress point of view, for me personally, in the acute moment that you experience like anxious, worrisome thoughts or that stressed out, fast paced thinking, the ability to come to your breathing and regulate your nervous system, and proper breathing is when you can breathe in through your nose and then fill your stomach up with air rather than this kind of like in through our mouth, chest. It's proper full breathing. And if you're listening now, you can try and do that. You can try and breathe in through your nose and fill your stomach up with air. It might be quite difficult to do. If you begin to practice that skill, you get better and better at it. So the breathing part is amazing, so you learn to regulate your system. The other side of meditation that's really powerful is you just start to spend a hell of a lot more time with your mind. And lots of us kind of fear our minds a bit, and we find them a bit intimidating to spend time with. So we're seeking for this world of distraction where we think, let's always just be checking the phone or working or email or have the TV on or something like that. And when you actually start spending more one-on-one time with it, you eventually confront that more intimidating voice and you make friends with it, and then you calm it down, and then spending time in the quiet becomes nicer and nicer. And I honestly think spending time with yourself in the quiet is one of the most pivotal parts of having good mental health.
Amazing. And I think also, I think there is no right or wrong way. I just want to present that with people because I do feel sometimes that we look at other people and we say, oh, this person has this morning routine and I'm going to follow this morning routine to the T. And then you realize after 5 days that 3 days, a day, it's not
one morning.
One morning, it's not working for me, right? Because it's not supposed to work for you. It's someone else's.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So, I want to really encourage people to find what works for you and to experiment. I would say kind of take messy action, because at the end of the day, you're only going to figure out what works for you if you have a go and you try it and you just, see it as an experiment. That takes some of that pressure off to do it perfectly, because you can't do it perfectly. Nobody does it perfectly, but you do it in a way which serves you, right? I mean, if I take Heine, my husband, he doesn't meditate in the formal sense, but he loves to, after he's done his workout in the gym, sit in the sauna for like 10, 15 minutes. And he does his sort of cold showers. And he says that that's his time to just get really still and quiet and reflect on, just being, not even doing anything, just being. So meditation doesn't have to be like, sitting like a Buddha.
I certainly don't sit like a Buddha.
So I just wanted to present that with people, because I would encourage everybody, just even if it's 5-10 minutes. I started with the Calm app, and there's a little introductory course on the Calm app, which is like 21 days, where you just literally go in for 21 days and you just follow a guided meditation. That's how I started, and fortunately, I was able to kind of get into the habits. And as I say now, for me, it's a cornerstone of my morning routine and how I show up every day.
That's very cool. And they also have, I've seen on the Calm app, they have this new Daily J thing. I don't know if you're familiar with Jay Shetty, but
yes,
he's partnered with Calm, and that's only like 7 minutes, I believe. So it's a nice starting point to try and ease your way into something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really cool. So we're talking about digital detoxing next.
Yes, I love the digital detoxing.
Favorite things. So tell us more about what do you mean when you say digital detoxing?
Yeah, so like everything I'm sharing, I share all of these things because they're things that I find difficult, which is why I've introduced these habits, so like mindfulness or whatever it may be. So with the digital detoxing, I'm someone that really finds my phone super addictive. I love scrolling it, I love checking it, I love social media. And as I became more and more familiar with the neuroscience of the mind and how much overusing the phone, so using it for too longer periods of time or too frequently checking it, how depleting that is on the mind and how much it's crashing out our energy and killing our focus and killing our motivation, I started to think, how can I get better at spending a prolonged period of time off it to effectively recharge your system. Like very similar to how the phone has to occasionally go and be recharged. I really think our brain is the exact same thing, and our brain recharges when we're not on tech, basically. The tech just does require a lot of our energy. So with this digital detoxing thing, the mission of digital detoxing is to, for me, I kind of follow the simple process. It's to, on weekdays, achieve a 60-minute window once a day where you don't see tech. So that's like the absolute aim. So if you think right now that's a ridiculous aim, you could aim for 30 minutes and gradually build. But I think the gold standard would be 60 minutes without seeing tech at some point in your day. And as you mentioned earlier with the morning routines, everyone's unique with how they'd like to approach things. So this could be trying out not checking it first thing, going about your normal morning with your walk or your breakfast or your shower, getting ready, and then checking it. So you've achieved it first thing in the morning, which is super cool. It could be at your lunch break, you decide to like get outside or cook your lunch and stuff and just like leave your phone on the desk. I think even if you don't achieve a full digital detox, at lunchtime, not going on your phone is so good for your head, even if it means, oh, let's watch some Netflix on the iPad or whatever it could be that you'd enjoy. If at lunchtime, when you're trying to rest and trying to recharge, if you're then also having your phone on you and doing your WhatsApp, Slack and email, you're not actually recharging at all. You're not really having a lunch break. So lunch could be a time to get a bit of a digital detox in. And similarly, it could be achieved in the evening. So it could be full digital detox. It could be no phone, no screens at all. You could be going out to the gym or something, or you could be going out socializing and be like, right, I'm just not going to check the phone. It could be something like that. Or it could be in the evening, if you're going to watch telly and stuff with your partner or on your own or whatever it may be, it could just be making sure the phone isn't on you so that you can't sit and watch the telly while simultaneously checking your phone. So aiming for an hour in the weekdays, I think is really cool to have a full window off it. I think it's one of those things that you have to just try and then think, wow, what do I feel like after this hour without tech? And you might be quite surprised how good it feels. And then on the weekends, I kind of think about doing an extended digital detox of aiming for sort of 2 to 3 hours on one of Saturday or Sunday without seeing it. So that could be going for a really long walk without your phone on your own or with your friends or something like that. That could be really good because then you're getting all the other benefits of the fact you're out in nature and you're with people. Or it could be when you're socializing, being like, right, let's all just not go on our phones for the next few hours. But whenever you're on the weekend, trying to find like 2 hours minimum where you're fully off the tech, I think is powerful for your head.
Absolutely. And I think for me, what I've learned to do as well is sort of just leave my phone. So when I go and I have a personal training session in the mornings, I don't need my phone.
Yeah, nice.
Because for an hour I'm with my personal trainer. So I don't necessarily use my phone the way I do when I train on my own. So I just leave my phone at home. But it's just being aware and being conscious, making these conscious little decisions. And there is something called the minimum effective dose, right? So you might, when you're listening, thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to do this for 60 minutes. That's a long time. But actually, as TJ said, it's actually really start with 10 minutes. I mean, start with 5 minutes because that is a minimum effective dose because it will make a difference. The key is that you experiment, as we said earlier, and that you don't give up, at least for sort of 21 days. Just give it a go and actually just, see how you manage. And the brain is a fascinating thing because the brain initially will resist it because it's designed to protect us. But the more you do it, the brain will get these little signals and I think they're called neurotransmitters. I don't know, but the brain will begin to realize that she keeps doing this. This must be important to her. Mm-hmm. And it will follow the path of least resistance, right? So it will get so used to you doing the same thing over and over again that it will then start adjusting. That's the beauty of, rewiring and I mean, this is your area of expertise. So
yeah, the brain can definitely rewire over time.
And this is the thing, right? I think it's called neuroplasticity.
That's the one.
Right? Yeah. So let's talk about fear to tech because tech's not going away, right? It's not going anywhere.
We're going to look back on this stuff and think it was so basic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking back at sort of 8 years ago, 10 years ago, when, having a sort of, just a device was a bit of a novelty. And now it's like, it's just there everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about sort of the whole metaverse and virtual reality and what's coming and how that's going to further fuel this debate.
Yeah, I'm super, super interested in future tech and always have been. I've just had an obsession with trying to understand the future my whole life. And I definitely think this idea of the metaverse and virtual reality is on the horizon. For anyone that's maybe not heard of that, this is the concept of us having virtual worlds that we can enter through virtual reality, which is where you put on these headsets and you kind of have effectively an iPhone right on your face, and it feels like you're actually in there, and it's much more immersive. And I do think this is kind of a natural progression for humans' relationship with tech, because currently we only experience tech in 2D effectively. Like right now you're looking at a screen and I'm 2D on this screen, and when you're looking at your phone, everything is 2D. And this is the idea that everything will become 3D. So right now, this podcast will be taking place in a virtual room, and we'd be sitting on sofas next to each other, and we'd have like an avatar version of ourselves instead of the real one. And whilst I think it seems like, oh God, that'll never take off, that'll be too weird for us, I think it will eventually become just like a far better way in which humans can communicate. And I think we'll eventually start thinking, oh, maybe we should just have our calls in there because we have better quality conversations, because it feels a bit more real than it does when we're doing it like this. And I think it'll be very big from like a work perspective in meetings and all those kind of stuff. And then I think it will get very, very big in the education space for young people. I say all this also with the understanding that I really think the phone is having a big effect on mental health. I think this is going to be that, but way, way more, because the big challenge with the phone is the amount of pleasure we can constantly be experiencing through social media, and too much pleasure really crashes out our mind. As we know, if you drink a load of alcohol and have too much alcohol pleasure, you feel pretty crap the next day. So the pleasure that's going to have, the pleasure to be experienced in virtual reality is just going to be off the charts. So it's going to be one of those things we're going to have to progressively, like we're trying to figure out with this tech, it's just going to be how do we use it in the right way, basically.
And I think I think it's almost like the need to find the solution and the opportunities and to make it work for us and not against us, is going to increase with new tech, because it's going to become so disruptive and so potentially harmful that it's almost like we've got to, for our own safety, like survival, we're going to have to make it work for us. And that's the bit that I'm excited about, because I'm like, we're expansive, right? And it's incredible what we will be able. I mean, when you were saying about sitting in the room together and having the avatars, I just kind of visualized it, and I thought, how exciting!
I know. Yes, I have a similar experience.
It's like, how freaking exciting! But of course, there's always the dark side.
There'll be loads of really cool things about it. Music will be crazy. You'll be able to go to concerts and stuff. You'll be able to do things like that a lot more. You'll be able to watch sport inside there, which will be a totally new experience. You'll be able to play sport inside there with your friends after work. So there'll be so much of it that actually really does connect humans together. But then it's also just like, it might be so good that humans start to deprioritize life outside of it, which is one of the really big reasons whenever I'm training companies and I go deep into this digital detoxing concept of you need to get good at spending time off of your phone. One of the biggest things I explain is that right now the phone is like pretty easy to put down. This is going to be a lot harder for us to want to spend time out of, because it's just going to be a pretty amazing experience in there, and you'll have your meetings and you'll do your work stuff, and then it might be, oh look, I could go and play virtual reality table tennis with my sibling, and I haven't seen them for a bit, so suddenly you're playing table tennis with them, and it's just all of these different things will connect together, and we might end up really wanting to spend a lot of our time in there. But then this human instinctive part of us that wants to be nice, natural humans running around outside is going to get underwhelmed effectively. So getting good at spending time off the phone is going to serve you very well when you want to be good at spending time off of this new super cool stuff.
Amazing. can. This is always, the time always runs up too quickly on these chats, and I think we can carry on for hours. I absolutely love speaking to you, and the wealth of incredible, just insights that you've shared with all of us today. It's amazing. I always wrap up my conversations just with some real practical takeaways and top tips. So I wanted you to just kind of share, and I think we could actually just summarize what you've already shared. Sort of the top 3 things that you would say, and let's say encourage people to experiment with. If they in the starting blocks, what are the sort of top 3 things that you would encourage people to start experimenting with?
Yeah, so the top 3, I would say the digital detoxing one. So that's experimenting with trying to find a period of time every day when you're off your phone. If possible, doing it first thing in the morning could be pretty life-changing, and is huge for all the clients I work with. So digital detoxing would be one. The next one would be trying to go on walks out in nature in the quiet a bit more often. So if you can get out for some walks, and if you are afraid of the idea of spending time in the quiet, just know that I was exactly the same. I found it terrifying to do that, and over time it's become a lot more comfortable. And this morning, for example, I was out there for about an hour without my phone, and like the idea of doing that back like a few years ago is crazy. So quiet walks out in nature without the phone, experimenting with the digital detoxing. And then the final thing that I think is really important to recognize is some of these things that are crashing out our dopamine really are the source of why many of us feel so low. So you have a group to pick from, which is junk food, alcohol, pornography, social media, or drugs, which is like the vaping and cigarettes and stuff like that. And if you listen to that list, if you think you're exhausting one of those, you're really smashing social media, or you're really smashing junk food, or you're really smashing alcohol, I'd really think about picking one and recognizing, although it's so annoying because it's like, I love that thing and I'm really addicted to that thing will be the source of a lot of your pain potentially. And thinking about how you can reduce it down could be pretty transformational for you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I've loved that. Thanks for so many great questions.
And so if you want to get in touch with TJ, you can find him on Insta, TikTok, or LinkedIn at TJ Power.
Yeah, I put content out there every day, which is pretty fun. Lots of different ways you can learn about all this stuff.
Yeah, and absolutely. Love spending time with you, and not just in here today, but also weekly with our sessions that we have with you. So incredibly insightful, and learning so much from you every day. So thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next time.